So the guy on the far left, top left of the screen over there, that's Antiochus Epiphanes IV. This is the guy that Daniel was talking about in Daniel chapter 8, but he's also a picture and a type, a foreshadowing of the Antichrist. And Jesus, remember, Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, then you will know that his coming is near, right? In other words, Jesus was saying this is future. And this guy that you see in the far left up there, the top left, is Antiochus Epiphanes. He was around 167 BC, before Christ. So this guy was a picture and a type of the vile one, the Antichrist, the one that's coming in the future. So why is that important? Because if you understand who this guy is, you will understand what the Antichrist will be like. Now, what's interesting is, this is really interesting, he had, check this out, he had a bride, and her name was Laodicea the fourth. And check this out, the church of Laodicea, or the town of Laodicea, where the church of Laodicea was from, was named after her. So this Antichrist type had a bride who was like, Laodicea was named after her. And Jesus talked about that church of Laodicea, and he was not even in that church. But the church before it, the church of Philadelphia, which means brotherly love, he was not only in that church, but he told them they had an open door to heaven, and that they would be spared from the hour of trial, which is going to come upon the whole world. That speaks of the rapture, the being caught up to the Lord before this time of wrath, when God's wrath is poured out on the earth. Because the scriptures say that we who are believers, we are not appointed to God's wrath. Now, the church of Laodicea could be the church that's left behind. They're like phases in church history, right? That last church could be the church that's left behind, and Jesus tells them to repent, to turn to him so that they could be saved. They get a second chance, but they'll lose their lives, as the scriptures say in the book of Revelation. So Antiochus Epiphanes, very evil, vile man, and we're going to talk about what he did and why this is important, because what he did was he was there 7 years in Jerusalem, or 6 years actually in Jerusalem, and he set up a statue of Zeus. You could see that coin right there. That's an actual coin from that era. And that far left corner, that's Antiochus Epiphanes IV. And then just to the right of it is the back of that coin, and that's his image of Zeus. And the history says that he set up an image of Zeus in the holy place of the temple. So it was an abomination to God, and he slaughtered a pig and spilt the blood all over, killed the good high priest that was there, killed the good priests, brought in his own priests, which eventually became what is called the Sadducees. They were connected with these guys, these Hellenistic priests. And then these guys over here, this coin that you see right here, I'm going to enlarge it for you, this one. This is the Maccabean Revolt. This is an image of, I don't think it was a coin, it's just an image of Judas Maccabees. And these were the good guys. These guys restored the temple, cleansed it, restored it, got rid of the evil high priests, these evil priests that this Antiochus Epiphanes guy put in place, and they brought the Jewish worship back. There was a miracle, according to the history of this, where the menorah stayed lit, and this is where we get Hanukkah, the winter feast. And Jesus went to the winter feast in Jerusalem, to the temple, he recognized it. He was there. There's only one winter feast, and that's Hanukkah, and Jesus was there. So this right here, this image would be a picture of this guy's bride. So I'm going to reduce that one. Let's take a look at this one real quick. So this image right here, this is Laodicea IV. This is her. This is her coin that was made after her, and this is his bride. So it's like God is like trying to tell us, right? The church of Laodicea would be like they would start out being the bride of this Antichrist guy that's coming. But then if they repent, if they turn away from him and turn towards Jesus, that they will be saved. That there's a second chance for them. They can be saved. And that's important to know, because God is the God of second chances. That's why I believe there's a pre-trib rapture and then a tribulation period, a 7-year tribulation period, because during that whole 7-year period, you would have an opportunity to have a second chance, that your soul would be saved, that you would live in eternity with God, that you would be saved. And that's what God's heart is about, a heart of mercy, right? So let's take a look at Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 8. Let's take a look at it right now. So in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. And I saw in the vision, and when I saw, I was in Susa, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision, and I was at Ulai, the canal. And I raised my eyes and saw, and behold, a ram standing on the bank of the canal. It had 2 horns, and both horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. And I saw the ram charging toward westward and northward and southward, and no beast could stand before him. Sorry, I lost my place there. This isn't edited. And could stand before him, and there was no one who could rescue from his power. He did as he pleased and became great. As I was considering, behold, a male goat came from the west across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram with his 2 horns. Now, later, God tells him, he explains to Daniel what this is about. So the 2 horns were the Medo-Persian Empire. One was greater than the other. And now he sees this horn that charges at him and kills him. And that's Alexander the Great. And that's exactly how it played out. And this is way before any of this happened. That's why a lot of liberal scholars say that Daniel had to be a fraud because of these prophecies. Prophecy is telling the future, right? So he says, I saw it came close to the ram, and he was enraged against him and struck the ram and broke his 2 horns. This is speaking of Alexander the Great. And the ram had no power to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled on him. And there was no one who could rescue the ram from his power. And the goat became exceedingly great. But when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and instead of it came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. Now, there was 4 leaders. As soon as Alexander the Great died, they said, who do we give the kingdom to? And he said, give it to the strong. And they gave it to these 4 generals at that point. So those are the 4 other horns that came out of this. And if you don't believe me, God explains all this to him and tells him who these empires are. So here it is. So verse 9 says, out of one of them came a little horn. Now this is speaking about the Antichrist, but also about Antiochus Epiphanes the 4th. He was the one who came out of this. This is actually speaking of him first, but he's a type of the Antichrist. So here it is. It grew great, even to the host of heaven, this little horn. And some of the host and some of the stars it threw down to the ground and trampled on them. It became great, even as great as the prince of hosts, and the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. And a host will be given over to it, speaking of this Antichrist, right? Together with it. So it's like mixing. Right here we're mixing Antiochus Epiphanes and what happened in 167 BC to what's going to happen in the future with Jesus at the very end of the age. So, and a host will be given over to it together with a regular burnt offerings because of transgression, and it will throw truth to the ground, and it will act and prosper. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, For how long is this vision concerning the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state. That's exactly how much time Antiochus Epiphanes ruled, that 2,300 days. It's amazing how he fulfilled this completely and fully. The Jewish people believe this even to this day, that he was the fulfillment of it, rightfully so. But he was also a picture and a type, just like Joseph was a picture and a type of Jesus Christ, right? He was sold for silver, despised, rejected by his own. Later, he was falsely accused, put down in that place of condemned. He tells the fate of those two condemned with him, the cupbearer and the baker, right? One is cursed, one lives, just like the cross. Then he was raised up out of that place, brought before the throne. He was the only one found worthy to reveal God's future plan, just like Jesus in Revelation 5. And then Joseph was exalted. He was made the right-hand man to the power. He was given a Gentile bride before that 7-year time of great trouble came, that 7-year famine. And it was during that 7-year time of great trouble that he rescues and he saves and forgives all of Israel. That's God's plan. It's spelled out in the Bible. So just like Joseph was a type and picture of Jesus Christ, this Antiochus Epiphanes was a type and a picture of the Antichrist. Okay, and that's what we see here in Daniel. So in verse 15 of Daniel, it says, Then when I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it, and behold, there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, right? And it called, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So this man, who knows who it is, it could have been a pre-incarnate Jesus, tells Gabriel to make this man, Daniel, understand the vision. So he came near to where I stood, and when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. But he said to me, Understand, O son of man, that the vision is for the time of the end. Now, was Antiochus Epiphanes the time of the end? No. But Jesus also talked about it as being a time for the time of the end. And then here in verse 18, it says this. It says, And when he had spoken to me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground, but he touched me and made me stand up. He said, Behold, I will make known to you what shall be in the latter end of the indignation, for it refers to the appointed time to come, the time of the end, As for the ram that you saw with the two horns, these are the kings of Media and Persia. So he's given the interpretation of that vision. I didn't make that up. That's Media and Persia, the two horns, the ram. And the goat is the king of Greece. Yeah, right. Alexander the Great, who conquered the world by 33 years old, right? He did this fast. Just like that ram came, that goat with the horn between its eyes was fast. And as for the horn that was broken in place of which the four others arose, remember those four generals, 4 kingdoms shall arise from his nation, because those generals ended up starting their own kingdoms because it was fragmented into 4, right? But not with his power. And at the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their limit, a king of bold face, now he's talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, who is a picture of the Antichrist, a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. His power shall be great, but not by his own power, and he shall cause fearful destruction, and shall succeed in what he does, and destroy mighty men and the people who are the saints. By his cunning, that's like subtle. He's very subtle and smooth and manipulative, right? By his cunning, he shall make deceit prosper under his hand, and in his own mind he shall become great. Without warning, he shall be broken, but by no human hand. The vision of the evenings and the mornings that has been told is true, but seal it up. The vision is for it refers to many days to come now, because this is way before this guy Antiochus Epiphanes happened, and it's also before the end of time, right? And I, Daniel, was overcome, and I lay sick for some days, and I arose and went about the king's business, but I was appalled by the vision and did not understand it. because knowledge would be increased later, right? And it didn't happen yet. So, of course, Daniel would not understand it. But this king says that this speaks about the end. Now, that's what we know about this Antiochus Epiphanes character. We even have a coin. I showed you that. I thought it was interesting that we can see it. I'm sorry. That's right here. That this is what he looked like. Okay. And let's see, I can make that bigger. This is what he looked like. This is the guy that defeated him, Judas Maccabees. And this other one was his bride, Antiochus's bride, who was Laodicea the fourth. So this is what we see. This is what this guy looks like. This is that bold character who had an image of Zeus on the back of his coin. And it even says here, Antiochus Epiphanes, Epiphaneos in the Greek, and that means God manifest. That's what this guy thought of himself. He thought he was God manifest. So that's what we see, this Antichrist type. I'm going to tell you some facts about this guy that are very interesting. So he sacrificed a pig on the altar in the holy place of the temple. This is a huge abomination to the Jewish people and God, really. They made up another name for him. It's called Epimanes, not Epiphanes, but Epimanes, which meant the mad or the mad one. So they didn't like this guy at all, and I don't blame them. So it's interesting because I've heard other guys, one of which was our president for some time, saying it's like an Epiphanes about himself. He used to say that. Weird. Why would anybody say that? So he defiled the temple. He sacrificed a pig on the altar. He set up an object sacred to Zeus in the Holy of Holies. This was that abomination of desolation, right? He killed the good high priest Onias, O-N-I-A-S, and he killed him on December 14th, 164. He slaughtered a pig. He slaughtered many, many Jewish people, kind of like the Hamas did, right? He slaughtered them, infants, women, children. In just 3 days, 80,000 Jewish people were lost. 40,000 were murdered, just like the Hamas did, right? But at a bigger extent. 40,000 were murdered, and 40,000 were taken as hostages and sold as slaves. He burned the holy books in the temple. His bride was Laodicea the fourth. Laodicea is named after her, the church of Laodicea, the one that Jesus isn't even in. His real name is Mithridates. Mithridates. This is his real name. And Mithra was the ancient Iranian sun god associated with kingly glory. In other words, the king of Persia. Remember that the prince of Persia, remember the angel had to fight the prince of Persia later on in Daniel to get to Daniel. Remember that? When Daniel was praying. So it's interesting that the Iranian sun god Mithra was this guy's original name. So interesting stuff. You need to look at what Jesus said about Daniel, the prophet. He called him a prophet. So there should be no discussion in any of these left-leaning scholarly realms about the book of Daniel and the authorship of Daniel and whether he was a prophet or not. There should be none of that, but there is. They debate it. It's crazy. Also, we want to look at what Jesus said. He said this abomination of desolation was speaking about the end. Yes, Antiochus Epiphanes fulfilled that in a near side fulfillment, but there's also what's called the far side fulfillment, the complete fulfillment, which is the end of time. So that's what we see here, and that's what we see in Daniel chapter 8. Looking forward to going to the next chapter with you guys. I love you. Hey, check out this playlist right here, How to Find Jesus or How to See Jesus in the Old Testament. I think you'll be blessed by it. God bless you. Remember, Jesus wins in the end. I love you.